you got today, then?
Just a little tomato, crisp lettuce, and cool, creamy Philadelphia spread thick on granary bread.
Oh. What you got today, then?
Crisp, crunchy celery, lashings of creamy Philadelphia, and a little Lollo Rosso for that continental touch.
Nice. What's that, then?
Just Philadelphia.
Just Philadelphia?
It is my birthday.
Lovely.
Has cream cheese to do with our readings this morning, or indeed with our summer series on Hebrews more generally? Why have we just watched a rather dodgy advert for Philadelphia from 1989? I suspect you are now wondering if Sansbury has finally lost the plot, and whether anyone will notice if you now very quietly head for the door. But at this point, I am going to turn it back to you, and I have a very chocolatey prize here for anyone who can tell me what links Philadelphia with our reading from Hebrews this morning. And I'm going to suggest hands up just to avoid the stampede of answers. William? That's a really good answer, but not the one I was looking for. Anybody else? Yes, Matthew.
Philadelphia is named after the name of the place Philadelphia was the city of love.
I think Matthew's been reading ahead, but there we go. So yes, that is absolutely right. Philadelphia literally means brotherly love. And the writer of Hebrews uses it in the very first verse of our reading this morning from chapter 13. Literally, let brotherly love abide. Now, of course, that is all a bit sexist, which is why the NIV now translates it rather more appropriately as keep on loving one another as brothers and sisters. I think it's a wonderful way of expressing the love that we are called to show each other as God's family. Because the early church practiced what is sometimes called fictive kinship. They looked on each other and treated each other like family. That sense of brotherhood and sisterhood was very fundamental to the way that they lived their lives as Christians. And that was incredibly important and relevant as the church was developing within a Jewish society in which family was so fundamental. This exhortation would have had a very specific meaning and relevance to the largely Jewish audience of this letter. And of course, these days, as Matthew says, we also think of Philadelphia not just as a delightfully creamy, soft cheese, but also as the capital of the state of Pennsylvania, named after the remarkable Quaker and colonist William Penn. Now, if you don't know much about Penn, I would encourage you to Google and perhaps read a little bit about his life, which was eventful, to say the least. William Penn was a leading 17th century Quaker, writing many pamphlets and even being imprisoned for his religious views in the late 1660s. Despite that, he was to find himself the governor of no less than 45,000 square miles of what became Pennsylvania, through a land grant from Charles II. Now, at that time, Penn was the world's largest non-royal landowner. He founded Pennsylvania's capital, Philadelphia, the city of brotherly and sisterly love, in 1682, hoping that it would be a beacon for a new sort of society, very different to the cities that Quaker settlers were coming from all across Europe. Penn once famously wrote, "I expect to pass through life but once. If therefore there be any kindness I can show, or any good thing I can do to any fellow being, let me do it now, and not defer or neglect it, as I shall not pass this way again." It's a very heartwarming expression of a very active and practical sort of Christianity. But as a haven of brotherly love, Philadelphia was perhaps only a partial success, at least by our very critical modern standards. While Penn was distinguished amongst colonists for his treatment of Pennsylvania's Native American tribe, he was far less loving and inclusive of black people. He was a slave owner, and he excluded the black population from many of the protections of Pennsylvania's charter. And while he founded Philadelphia on a writ of religious tolerance that made it a rare and fruitful haven for Protestant settlers of all kinds, he still excluded Catholics and Jews and Muslims. Those omissions were repaired later in the city's history, and Philadelphia became a leading light of the abolitionist movement and a bastion for women's suffrage in the United States. So for me, it goes to show that what looked like brotherly love to William Penn in 1682 looks distinctly under par 340 years later. Little by little, we human beings are, I believe, very gradually getting to grips with what love really means in practice, even though it's taking far longer than any of us would like. To borrow from Martin Luther King, the arc of the moral universe is long, but it does indeed bend towards justice. Even in my lifetime, so much has changed in society's attitudes to people who've historically been oppressed or marginalized because of their gender, their color, their religion, their sexuality, their disability, and so on. And I suspect that advert from only 30 years ago that we saw earlier would now rightly no longer be acceptable in the way that it portrays women. And to some extent, the church has even adapted too, although perhaps often more slowly than the rest of society, and with a great deal more to do. Which is why the letter to the Hebrews is so incredibly important. As we've seen and we've heard in these past 5 weeks, this letter is literally packed with Christian doctrine. It outlines to a primarily Jewish audience how and why Jesus is simply bigger and better than anything they've seen before in the Old Testament. And it exhorts a church that is already suffering persecution not to give up, because Jesus is quite simply the real deal. Now that, I think, is important for us as we perhaps struggle at times for motivation in what is, let's face it, a largely post-Christian Britain. And then this final chapter contains some very specific instructions for its readers, starting with the 3 that we've heard this morning. Love each other as brother and sister. Show love and hospitality to those you don't know, and care for those suffering persecution in prison. They're commandments that parallel so beautifully the words that we heard a short while ago from Matthew's Gospel, in which Jesus calls us to care for the hungry, the thirsty, the stranger, the poor, the sick, and the imprisoned. Truly, I tell you, whatever you did for one of the least of these brothers and sisters of mine, you did for me. Last week, I had the great joy of walking the Seven Sisters coastal footpath with a certain Emma Sansbury. It was an add-on to our summer holiday, a bit of dad and daughter bonding time made possible by us having just a little bit more time off than Kyla and Adam. Those of you who know me well will know that I like a walk. And I found myself last week reflecting that there are few things that I like more in life than a good, clear path. You see, there's something very relaxing and releasing about a path that is so incredibly obvious that you can simply switch off and be in the moment. You don't have to navigate or worry about getting lost. You know the way and can simply walk one foot in front of the other. And of course, if you know that you simply have to keep the sea on your right-hand side until you get to Eastbourne Pier, it's even easier. Philadelphia is like that, isn't it? Such a simple commandment for us to love each other like family. A clear, straight path. Not complicated, not some challenging bit of Christian doctrine that we really have to puzzle out. A simple way of living and being and loving. And there is, frankly, no better time than now for us to be more focused than ever on that sense of brotherly and sisterly love as we work out how we can best respond to the many issues that we face. The continuing war in Ukraine and the need to keep supporting refugee families. The impending challenges of the fuel crisis, high inflation, and the prospect of real, widespread poverty. The developing climate crisis and the challenges of an increasingly divided society. And so where, I wonder, can we bring a little Philadelphia? What love can we bring to mend a broken world? Amen.
Are you sat comfortably, ready for the notices, everyone? Okay? Listen carefully. Please remember, next week we are back to 8 a.m, 9 a.m, and 10:45. Next weekend is Sally P's last weekend, and we have organised to have coffee and tea and pastries after the 9 o'clock and before the 10:45 to say a warm goodbye and wish Sally luck as she leaves us. So please do come along to those services next week. Also, on the table over there are some cards to say goodbye as well. So perhaps take time this morning, could you, to just put a little note in for Sally. And next item, September the 10th, should be in your diary. Carol and Michael have organised this, what sounds rather challenging but very good fun, Chiltern Three Peaks Walk. We're going to then come back here to St Mary's for a barbecue at 5. You can do as much or as little of the walk. You don't even have to do the walk. Come and join us for a barbecue at the end. There is a sheet like this, hold on, at the back. If you're interested in the walks, pick one up. Also, please do sign up to help with a salad or pudding, or just to let us know you're coming to the barbecue so that we can have numbers for catering. Next thing is, please could you include sparklers on your prayers? We will be starting again on Monday the 12th of September, so spread the word. Also, if you are available to help as little or as often at Sparklers, our toddler group, please do speak to me or email me. That would be wonderful. Now, Ian spoke about this in his sermon this morning, and we're all aware of financial struggle that's happening now and that will be happening. Sally Mooring and I met with John Shaw, who many of you, I'm sure, will know, coordinates the collections for the Chiltern Food Bank. We always used to have a box here on the first Sunday of the month, but due to COVID, we've got out of the habit. But we're going to instigate that box back next Sunday. So please do bring some items of food along. If you go onto their website and onto our email update, there is a list of items that they require at the moment. They're short of everything, actually. So please, if you can and you're able, please do bring something along to go into the box next week. And also, perhaps it's on your heart to help in that area. Could you perhaps help in getting the things that are donated here to John Shaw? If you can let me know, I will put you in touch with John. And that's it. That's our notices this morning. Oh, hold on, no, it's not. William, yes? Would you like to?
I'm sorry to interrupt, and something slightly more, if like, prosaic, I suppose you could say, is we're going to replace all the lights in the church with LED fittings. But some of you will have noticed that every now and then the lights have a bit of a will of their own. And I'd quite like to get to the bottom of that before getting up there and replacing all the fittings to save quite a considerable amount of electricity, as you might well imagine. So, I know that it's sometimes when you switch the lights off, they don't all go off and one or two are left on. Sometimes when you come to the church when they should be off, one or two are on. Can you please identify whereabouts in the church they are and let me know? Okay. The reason is that I think it's one of the control boxes is going wrong, and I need to try and track down which one, because it's £150 a pop to replace the controller. Wow. And I don't want to have to replace all four. So please, if you notice any of the lights doing anything unusual, staying on, not coming on, or sometimes they flick on and off at the back particularly, please let me know. I'd be most grateful. Thank you very much. I'm sorry to take
No, William, thank you. That's really important. Thank you very much.